Thank you and welcome everyone again to our monthly speaker series hosted by the Inclusive Gifted Education Center. Our center is housed within the Pacific Inclusive Education Research and Resources Center, or PEER for short. PEER is managed by the faculty and staff at the Center on Disability Studies located on the University of Hawaii at Manoa campus. The overarching goal of our center is to nurture untapped talents through inclusive practices. To reach this goal, we host monthly speaker series as well as an in-person symposium that focuses on building awareness and neurodiversity and twice exceptionality. Our speaker series and symposiums are made possible through funding from the U.S. Department of Education, Jacob K. Javits Gifted and Talented Education Program grant. Each month of our speaker series will focus on a different topic and perspective from well-known speakers in areas of inclusion, neurodiversity, and education. I'm happy to introduce today's speakers. We have two, Philip Davey and Jared Nali Ae. Philip is a scientist and entrepreneur with a passion for human and planetary health, a graduate of the University of Hawaii at Manoa's Molecular Biology and Bioengineering PhD program. He has worked in STEM roles on 3 continents and across academia, industry, and healthcare services. Philip's experience spans roles from research technician in a large multinational corporation to CEO of a small biotech startup. This range has given him a deep appreciation for how a team with diverse backgrounds, skills, and capabilities can enhance both culture and productivity in a variety of STEM fields. Having mentored students with learning support needs from high school through graduate education, Philip is excited to be contributing to the support of students with disabilities in STEM education. Jared is a specialist at the University of Hawaii Center on Disability Studies. He is a principal investigator on projects at CDS related to employment, transition services, and benefits planning. He also is the lead for the Turn the Tables virtual reverse job fair, which is created for high school students who are looking for employment opportunities. He is a former vocational rehabilitation counselor with state agencies working with high schools, colleges, corrections, and Native American rehabilitation programs. He's so glad to be working with CLD-TEAMS and looks to offer assistance for the students. So please welcome our May guest speakers. And with that, I'll turn it over to them.
Alrighty. Thank you, Jarek. Appreciate the introductions. Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Jarek mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this session, and I do appreciate that not everyone is comfortable doing this, showing their face during our presentation. It reminds me a little bit of getting on stage or playing musical instruments and being blinded by the lights. You can't see anybody in the audience. All right, okay, so as promised from the flyer today, we are going to be talking a little bit about the employer training work that Jared and I have been doing as part of the CLD-TEAMS project overall. And we're obviously now working on trying to convince employers that they're missing out on something by not including a larger number of employees with disabilities in their workforce, and how they can take on different strategies and implement different techniques to include more people with disabilities in their workplaces. So quite a lot of what we're going to discuss is going to be around a tool that we use, and we're going to spend some time towards the end of the presentation on this. And that tool is a workplace roadmap. So each employer that participates can generate their own roadmap and customize it to the specific needs of their workplace. So if you're joining this session, you probably have already heard about the CLD-TEAMS project. But I'll do a quick breakdown here. So CLD part stands for culturally and linguistically diverse, which as one employer here in the state mentioned, that's everybody, that's Hawaii. And then the TEAMS part is twice exceptional students achieving and matriculating in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So our focus is very much on supporting students who are getting into STEM fields. But as you look at the employee workplace, as you look at types of roles each and every company requires these days, there's a lot of STEM roles in different companies, in almost all companies now. Okay, moving on. Thank you. Okay, so As Jarek mentioned, this is supported through Department of Education grant. And the focus here obviously is heavily on education for the majority of the project. However, the portion we're going to talk to you about today is a bit of underlined here at the bottom. So we are really focusing our efforts here on making sure that after successfully going through the transition from high school into college and then making it through college and graduating, that the employers are ready to receive those successfully graduating students. So that's what we're going to get into a little bit more today. And I shall hand over to Jared to move on to the next section.
Thanks, Philip. So the main question or the headline that you saw on our first slide was the benefits of broadening the workforce. So why should you broaden the workforce? What does that actually mean? Okay. These are the next bullets will be questions that we've kind of asked ourselves. Is there an untapped resource? Is there employees or candidates that maybe we're just not considering? What are the pluses? Also, what are the minuses? So what's the benefits of having, say, these types of personalities, these types of special individuals, having them at your workplace? How do I retain innovative employees? We've had several stories shared with us about coaching when employers have gotten employees right to the point where they're just pretty almost to that perfect employee. And another business came in and took them away. So what are some ways that we can retain innovative employees that brought new ideas and maybe new culture, new background to our place of business? And then are there any benefits for the leadership? How does this help management? How does this help the other staff that's there? These are some of the questions that we've asked and some of the things that we'd like to address and we try to do in this training that we have available. Okay. And then lastly, we ask, are you in? Okay, so this is our question that we ask. Are you willing to be one that will participate in this and actually assist in moving in this direction and broadening the workforce? And might not just be for your business, could be for an entire community, could be for our entire university where we work at. Okay. So what are some things that we explore? We try to look and learn the value of a new workforce. So why do we see a varied workforce as an asset? So who are the employees? What are the benefits of hiring them? The term that you might have just heard earlier that we use is 2E or twice exceptional. What do these things mean? Okay. Why does inclusion work? See how this can work for you. And then as Philip mentioned earlier, the purpose of the training is to allow an employer to create a roadmap, to create a guide for them that if an individual, a potential candidate or a potential employee comes across their desk as somebody they're going to interview, what are some ways I can interact? What are notes that I'm already prepared to have and not have to rely on it or figure something out last second, okay? So the participants that participate in this, they'll understand some of the benefits. So some of those benefits, they're going to be related to open employment. What is that? We explore that big, and we take about half a module actually to dive in there and kind of learn what is an open employment, what is an open environment, what is open access. Okay. Second thing is we learn strategies. So we talk about some characteristics related to twice exceptional people, individuals that have disabilities, individuals that might be from different backgrounds. And then what are some workplace strategies for their success? How are different ways that we could mentor, communicate, or maybe even figure out best accommodations? Okay. One of the again, going back to the pluses is that at the end of this training, we have this certification. And by being certified and completing the roadmap, a certificate is given to you as a best place to work for not only disability access, but disability innovation. So this is a certificate that you can broadcast and actually invite these particular candidates will be drawn to this to look at that and see like this might be a place that I want to work. And then lastly, we create some stronger workplaces. What could this look like for you? How could we adapt and help you to mentor, coach, and get maybe to that perfect employee? And what are some things, or what are some workarounds that we can make that happen? Okay. So what is a varied staff? You'll see some of these bullet points that I have listed here, because these are the ones that our project focuses on. Twice exceptional, neurodivergence, varied workforce, persons with disabilities. They could be one of these, they could be all of these. Varied workforce, when we kind of refer to this term again, individuals from broad backgrounds, might be from different countries, might have different customs that they're used to, could be different, a totally different work environment, totally different work culture that an individual is used to. When we use this term twice exceptional, assume that majority of the audience has heard this before. But for our project purposes, we look at children who have characteristics that are gifted students, that have large amounts of potential for high achievement, but also have evidence that there might be one or more disabilities, or one or more barriers that might say keep them from maybe not being the most blaring candidate when it comes to just looking at a resume. Neurodivergence, another term that hopefully most of us here are familiar with. In our project, we're looking at individuals that include or are included on the autism spectrum, also specific learning disabilities, maybe other health impairments. We also include traumatic individuals that might have had traumatic brain injury in here as well. And then lastly, persons with disabilities. We spend some time looking at what does that actually mean? How does disability apply in the workplace? And what is your definition of disability? Are several tasks that we'll have throughout the training. So you could we spend some time exploring what those definitions are. For this purpose here, a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more life activities. And that is our surface definition for individuals with disabilities. But again, necessarily depends on the exactly what is presented at that time. Okay. All right. Creating a workplace that's designed for all. Okay. So this was actually the headline of our presentation today. So as you saw in your invitation and like, oh, maybe this is something I want to register for today, right? An open access workplace. What does this mean? Okay. So this is designed or something, or a place that's designed, or an environment that's designed for all people. That could include individuals with disabilities, include individuals that are not, that is able to use or fully and independently use everything in the area. Okay. Sometimes it can include things like accommodations or simple modifications. Some examples of access could be things as easy as parking spaces close to the entrance. Many of us will see that right now. Be things like having adequate floor space, or keeping hallways free of equipment or debris that might create barriers for others. And then another way of having open access is having professionals or ways of different types of communication or language. Our center, we use a lot of interpreting services. We have things where typically we'll have an ASL individual that will be meeting with us or side by side with us when we do things. Identify and remove barriers. This can be done with interactions. Interactions, some of the most important things are to always use people first language and to emphasize the person and not just the disability. If there's any time of this might come into doubt, or maybe I'm not necessarily sure, it's okay to ask and ask first, okay? And then also something to remember is that everybody's preferences can vary. So some may or may not appreciate it, but it is a known fact that it's a great thing to be able to just ask first, okay? Universal design is another one that we have here, or we call it user-friendly design. So what are some products? What are ways of communications? What are environments that are more usable by all people that might have possibly little to no cost at all? Some of these examples that have some technology pieces is automatic doors. Almost every store that we approach or walk to, the front door is automatic and it'll just slide open. Closed captioning is something that, I'll be honest, I sometimes use at home when watching TV. I kind of feel more comfortable having it on, where I can see what's actually being said or what's trying to be communicated. Voice recognition, large font text, entrances that don't necessarily have steps, using handles instead of doorknobs. These are all kind of great examples of universal design, and probably some that we all take advantage of today. And then our last bullet here, technology, or in our case, assistive technology. So what are some devices and equipment that can be used to help any person engage more fully in life activities or complete job duties, right? So some of those examples can be as low tech as a magnifying glass, or it can be as high tech as a computer, similar to kind of what we're using today. Others could be things related to mobility, such as wheelchairs, scooters, walkers. There's a lot of different pieces of technology that can be used when thought out properly. And how can I take these and apply these to my workplace so that it is a more workplace design for all?
Jared, do you mind if I jump in quickly?
Please.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, so some of the examples we've talked about here and Jared's just given, these are not necessarily things that employers have at the top of their minds. You know, some of the great examples like automatic doors or handles instead of doorknobs, these are all things you don't necessarily notice or pay attention to in your daily life. You don't really think of them as accommodations. So a lot of what we're doing with employer training is getting past some of the very basic misunderstandings or perhaps a concern about something that they don't know. And big ones that always crop up and we spend some time addressing in our training course are employer concerns. So things like not understanding what the legal requirements are, what they do have to do or shouldn't be doing. How much is it going to cost? That's always a big one. So great examples that Jared just gave there of simple and cheap things. But actually, on average, we see that employers usually don't have to spend more than $500 per employee in order to make accommodations. And even if $500 might sound like a lot, think about how much it costs to onboard a new employee and give them all their basic equipment to get them started. It's not adding much. So a lot of these are not things that have to be adapted for each and every individual employee, but rather it's about creating workplaces where everyone can be easily brought in without having to make significant changes. So an example we use when we're talking about universal design is different spaces within the workplace. Some people who have a need for constant stimulation are going to like bright, colorful, noisy places where there's other people around to interact with. Some people are not going to deal with that well. So they're going to need quiet spaces where there's lower lighting, less color, less stimulation, less interruptions from others. And if you can make sure that your workplace provides not just one of these, so you don't just have like the bright, colorful, open office plan, but you might also have a quiet space or places where people can book a room, shut themselves away, have a private space for the time that they need. Having this as a variety of different options means you don't have to make accommodations. You've already made them. That's part of the built-in plan for the workspace. Okay, I'll hand back over. Thank you, Jared.
Okay. So as Philip mentioned, and we kind of talked a bit about before, what are some reasonable accommodations or what are some reasonable job accommodations? The ones that Philip mentioned, those could be an easy fix, right? So in our training, again, that we're referring back to, we do dive in and we kind of look at policy and legislation. What are employers allowed or maybe allowed to ask, maybe not allowed to ask? What are some different maybe tax incentives or workarounds to actually get credits for making some of those accommodations available at the work site? Okay. We have some resources related to how do you apply for those or maybe what brackets you could fit in. So a good chunk or maybe it's a piece of the training that we do look at is how can businesses kind of take advantage of doing these and what are some better business practices that they could use so that the whole entire burden is not necessarily just on the business to maybe provide this exact accommodation. These policies, we spend some time referring to the Americans with Disabilities Act or the ADA, and we try to cover all of the titles in there related to employment, accommodations, transportation, state and local government, and especially telecommunication. And then spend a little bit of time discussing things related to discrimination of individuals with disabilities who might be actually qualified uh, for let's say, the job. Um, Another thing that we'll talk about and we'll spend some time talking about is what happens if an individual, say, doesn't disclose, or is it allowable for an employer to approach an employee and maybe talk about the disability based on their observations. And so disability disclosure. So what are some of the advantages of actually disclosing? Receiving accommodations would be one for sure, so that individuals are able to either pursue work or school. This is also creates an opportunity for other individuals or allows them to kind of learn some new things. Uh, Another thing that the business can benefit from as well is getting some legal protection, possibly. So we do spend some time about how to document things, how to make sure that what are proper ways that either take notes or have minutes that are related to meetings that you might have with the employer or with the employee. Okay. And then also sometimes it can improve the self-image. It might make the individual feel more comfortable talking about their disability. That's not something that's always easy for every single person. There are some disadvantages as well, and these can be some disadvantages for the individual. They may feel like they get treated differently. Once disclosure is done, it might feel like I'm isolated now. People are going to look at me differently. It could be an embarrassing feeling that just don't. I feel embarrassed now that I've made myself vulnerable. Um, it might create a perception to the other staff workers or maybe even the management as well that you might be too needy or might be not up to par. And it is quite possible maybe sometimes to get overlooked for job advancement. So that could be some disadvantage. And again, those are more about, say, emotions or feelings that an individual might have that might keep them from, say, not disclosing. So when is the best time? What are some best practices related to that? We explore that as well in the training. And one of the best things that we share or we try to share is that sometimes the best time to disclose is usually when a job has been offered or a job offer is received. And let's say I'm right about to start the job. Uh, is that the best time to disclose? It could be. It might not be, but starting up front and sharing those concerns and making sure that I have the tools necessary to complete those jobs from the beginning. There is a term, and it is a big one, and it's called undue hardship. Um, this is when a business and, say, an employee have done everything they can. They've explored things, they've looked at different options, and it's just gotten to the point where it might not happen, or the accommodations that's being requested or needed to perform the job duties or the job functions, it just might outweigh the cost related to it. So the undue hardship is something else that we'll explore and talk about in the training as well, so that a business is prepared when this might come to the forefront. Okay, Philip, anything to share in this particular slide here?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, disclosure is a tough one, right? Because one of the things we teach, and I'll just diverge slightly here and come back to this. We are not going to be giving specific answers to a lot of these questions in the course of today. Right? The entire course that we share and that we're doing these workshops covers a minimum of 4 hours, and there's plenty of self-guided extras that people can take their time to go through. So if you leave at the end of this feeling like you have a lot of questions, that's good because you can come back and join us and get the rest of it. But let me give a quick example here. So it's fairly well, it's becoming more common. I was going to say fairly common. It's becoming more common when you are applying for a job, not even to the point where you're being seriously considered for it, that you will get a disability disclosure form. And it won't be specific. It'll just be basically try the potential employer trying to understand if you're going to need accommodations. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that might be part of once they get into the serious consideration of a candidate, when they make the offer, they want to ask about accommodations in advance so they can be prepared. And part of it might be something else to do with the employer. So they could be, let's say, a federal contractor. And federal contractors have to try and make this aim for having 7% or more of their workforce as individuals with disabilities. So maybe they're trying to find ways to up the numbers that they're reporting back and show how close they're getting to that goal. But this is probably one of the trickiest parts going through, because we are simultaneously having to tell employers you cannot ask and you can't force disclosure, but we really encourage you to ask. So this is one of those delicate balances that we have to go through, and there's pending questions around that, which is understandable. But quite a lot of what we're doing is just covering the basics, uncovering some of the biggest unknowns for them, like making sure there is at least some boundary set. This is what you should be doing, this is what you can do, and you definitely shouldn't try to do this. It shouldn't try to, force your employees to disclose. You should be treating them like any other employee. So one of the fears Jared mentioned was fear of backlash or fear of someone claiming that they've been mistreated. So if someone's disciplined for bad work, maybe even if they're terminated from their role, the employer wants to know that they're not going to get backlash specifically because of a disclosed or undisclosed disability. And so just alleviating some of these basic fears and sharing what the appropriate approaches are from an HR perspective really help overcome some of those barriers. Okay, I'll hand back to you. Thanks, Jared.
Part of the roadmap that we look to create in partnership with the individuals that come through the training is, what are some strategies, or what are some ways that I can communicate effectively? In this particular section here, these are the three populations that we try to focus on. And again, it's related to this project. So we share some strategies in here, and again, they're tested strategies, but every individual's different, and these are some suggested ones as well. Okay, when we're looking at individuals that are neurodivergent, strong support from the leader, or strong support from management, can be from peers as well. Trainings should include input from those employees if possible. Mentoring is key, and it can reduce staff turnover. It also gives that term that we've used before. Okay. Individuals on the autism spectrum. One of the best suggestions that we could give is meet with them one-on-one to discuss the needs. Make suggestions for accommodations. So imagine or pick out. Think about things that might have worked before. Anticipate and address work accommodations or work culture ahead of time, and let those individuals know about different things. And it could be like dress codes. It could be like what's appropriate water cooler talk, and what is the culture of the environment at the job. And then ADD or ADHD, meet with the individual regularly. Our suggestion is to do it maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. Make sure that all important communication or instruction are things that are written down that they can go back and look at. And then if possible, especially related to things that are maybe be super important, is make sure to repeat those instructions if can, okay? When we're creating these roadmaps and when we're working through these trainings, we take suggestions from all the participants, and we try to compile the list so that we can share with everybody. And if they choose to make it a part of their roadmap, great. But we'll look at some of the best ways to communicate. Even the individuals that have kind of moved through our first modules with us at the start of the year have made some suggestions as well that we've noted. Okay, so this brings us to this part here about really our key to this training, or the product, or the results at the end of it, about building this roadmap. We do it in 4 phases. And for the next couple slides here, we'll talk about what each of these phases are and why is it important to the roadmap. Okay. So in the first phase, internal planning phase, consider sponsorships. What is the budget that might be associated to maybe an accommodation or a modification? Who are the leaders and who are the individuals that are there already that maybe they could help with or partner with? And then what's going to be the buy-in from the staff? Will all staff welcome this person or individuals? How can that look? For our second phase, define scope and maybe an employment model. So identify roles. What are the individuals going to do? How big is the role that they're going to take? What is their location or their work environment going to look like? How do we identify hiring managers or maybe onboard process so that it can fit into the mode or that all the information that needs to be communicated is given? Okay. Third phase, we'll look at customized training and support or internal training. How can we make that the training, so again, is universal for all? And then inviting individuals from their workforce or partners that are maybe super familiar, that can come and assist and come and coach the staff that's already there about maybe interaction techniques, maybe different ways to approach, maybe how to change things so that the communication is even more clear. Okay. And then recruiting and sourcing talent. Where's that going to come from? What are the external resources that we can use? Where are the candidates? What does our screening look like? How do we figure out our rubric score, or what makes an employee better than, or what makes a candidate better than the other? And what are some ongoing supports that we're going to need? Okay. So in these next couple of slides here, we're going to even ask a little bit more questions for each section. So I'll advance here, and we actually have some samples that we're going to share, and I'll let Philip describe these samples here.
Alrighty, thank you, Jared. So going back to phase one here, as I mentioned, a lot of what we're doing in the course of the training workshops is dispelling fears and improving understanding. But we do create some homework. So that's what this roadmap is. And you can't really give universal requirements to every single company. So they have to be able to customize it to their own needs. And in the first phase, maybe one of the most difficult ones in a way, because we're talking to people who they've learned something in the process, hopefully, and they have a better understanding. They've already had some interest. That's the reason they've joined us. But now they have to get buy-in from others within their company and from within their workplace. So when I mentioned the minimum of 4 hours earlier, that was for the parts that we are teaching. Everything else, preparing this roadmap, is work that goes on top of that. And this could be a 30-minute exercise, or this could be several weeks of spending a little time here and there, filling it out, depending on the approach people take. So this first part is really just preparing them, the person working on the roadmap, to understand how they're going to implement it within their workplace. And if you jump forward one, please, Jared, we'll share the example. So part of the reason we're sharing the example here today is because we're talking about something which is passing the workload back to the person participating, but we want to show this is not actually that scary. This is not a huge amount of work. It just takes a little bit of focus and a little bit of deliberate attention. So you've got 3 columns here, and this is going to be the same in each phase. In this first phase, we've got the focus point of the people that we need to talk to, the resources that we need to plan for, and who we're going to be bringing in. And then the middle part is the part obviously is going to be filled out. And the right-hand side here, we've got specific links to tasks that brought up during the course of the modules. So as Jared mentioned earlier, as we're teaching these modules, there's additional content like videos and resource links, but there's also specific tasks. So things like taking a pause for a moment after having just learned about what neurodivergence means. How does that, how's that had an impact on the person looking at it? How have they reflected on their own experiences and maybe realized, oh, that person I was dealing with before, maybe there's some characteristics there I could have recognized. So just as an example, and now we link those into parts throughout this roadmap to help give each person who's working through it an understanding and help them break that task down as well. So phase one here, who's going to be the responsible person? Who's going to be the ones who are making the decisions about what has to be implemented and what changes are going to be made within the workplace? And the plan for the staff buy-in, this one can be quite complicated because they've got to think about who within their team is going to need to support these changes, and then what's going to be the convincing point. So some of this can be very easy, right? If you're an HR person who's recruiting for your company and you get told there's a pool of 67 million Americans out there, 15% of the potential workforce that you're missing out on, great, how do I get in contact with them? But if you're the person who has to be concerned with the daily management of responsibilities and roles within that workplace, or you're the one who has to be dealing with legal issues related to employee discipline, maybe you have some much more specific concerns to address and you want to learn a bit more about why you should be making these changes. And then budget, we touched on briefly before, right? If you're making accommodations, you're going to have to budget for that. Any change within a workplace, you have to take that into consideration. So if there's a budgetary requirement, that means there's going to be somebody who's going to be responsible for signing off on that. And you need to know who that's going to go to and at what stage in the process you're going to be doing. So this is really just about planning out who's going to be involved, who has to sign off on it, and how you're going to go about making sure that happens. Okay, moving on. We do want to leave time for some Q&A at the end of the session today. Okay, phase two. So now we're looking at what changes are going to be made. If we're making sure we're bringing new people in, at what phase in their career path are they going to be coming in? And as Jared mentioned, one of the good approaches is having mentors and having internship programs. A lot of companies have internship programs. There's good reason for that. It's not just about getting free labor, although that, obviously can be a motivation. But realistically, if any of you have mentor junior people coming into a workplace, you will have put a lot of time and effort into helping them understand the role and teaching them their way around that workplace. So this is really like a pre-onboarding process, and it has dividends for companies. Right? The larger they can expand their intern program, and the more they can get interns well mentored through the process of what happens in the workplace and what the work actually involves, the less mysterious it is for them. So the more engaged those interns will be in becoming employees in the future. And that pays dividends in having those new employees come in and they're already committed to the work, they're already committed to the company itself, and they're ready to go. So if you're making this into the roadmap, you need to understand what has to happen, who has to be involved to do that. So if you jump on one more, thank you. Okay, so the second phase here is figuring out what team roles are going to be required. So if you're building a brand new internship program, or if you're adapting an existing one so that it can better accommodate individuals with disabilities into the workplace, or even just understand who's already there, perhaps has disabilities that are unseen. Because going right back to basics, a lot of people will only, when they think about disabilities, the first response is going to be visible ones. And as we talked about, is the focus for these sessions, neurodivergence and twice exceptional individuals. A good example for twice exceptional individuals might be, this person is amazing at all of that, but why do they have so much trouble with this one thing? Well, if you can understand that they might have a specific challenge with, say, dyslexia or dyspraxia, you can start to learn how accommodations can be adapted. So if you know who has to be involved, what knowledge they need to have, what process they're going to go through to recognize when people need specific accommodations and how to address that, that can all be planned into the scope of the employment model and built into both the hiring and management practices of the company. Okay, moving on to phase three. This is 3 of 4. We're getting close to the end. We will wrap up soon, I promise. All right, so now this is where you kind of tie 1 and 2 together. As we mentioned, for 1, you've got to get your staff buy-ins, and then you've developed your plan, and now you've got to connect those two. So here we're going to be making sure that there's not just the individuals who are going to be involved in your mentoring program or who are going to be directly involved with managing those employees, but everyone else is going to be interacting with them in their work on a daily basis. So if you jump on one more, please there. Okay, thank you. So you'll find that we had an interesting discussion recently, actually. We were talking about cross-border differences between strategies that are implemented. And some of these are mandated at a government level, and they might involve demonstrating not only that you have employed a specific proportion of your workforce as individuals with disabilities, but you've actually implemented training plans and you've held them a minimum number of times per year. So this is really following that same sort of strategy in a voluntary fashion. So what's the customized training plan to make sure not just the people who you need first to be aware of those with disabilities and how to work with them, but also everybody has at least some basic level of awareness. So rather than it hitting frustrations at the first point there's any kind of challenge, there's at least a first step in understanding to keep dialogues going and keep communication open and make sure people understand what strategies have to be implemented, or even most basically, who do they go talk to? If something's not working here, who do I go ask about that and find out what we can do about it? All right. And then last but not least, we're kind of coming back to the beginning of the process here, because as I mentioned, recruiters are quite well motivated by this idea of tapping into a larger talent pool, and especially if it's a highly skilled talent pool. As you may know, with in the tech field in particular, there can be overrepresentation of people with neurodivergence. It's not uncommon. They have a high set of skills in one area, maybe certain challenges in other areas. And no two people are alike in that sense. So there has to be an understanding not only of how to make them comfortable and productive as possible within the work environment by adapting the work environment, but also how to attract them in the first place. So if you can move on one more, please. Thank you. Okay. So then this is, we're getting back to here. The beginning is the recruitment plan. So now hopefully we've made a comfortable environment. We've made an environment where people are understanding and communicating thoroughly, but you have to make sure you're bringing in those individuals in the first place. Now, there's a little bit of a trick here, I would say, because one of the points we're trying to get across in the training modules is you almost certainly already have individuals with disability already in your workplace that just hadn't been recognized. But we still want to make sure that that keeps expanding, right? So we're coming back to what can you do in promotion of your workplace to make sure people understand it's going to be welcoming for them. So what points do you need to highlight in terms of accommodations that are made available, welcoming disclosure of disabilities without making people uncomfortable about doing it, and finding the right part of the process in recruiting, interviewing, and hiring to make sure you're getting as much information as possible, but not putting undue pressure on your new employees in the process. So this is really about making small adjustments all the way through, but understanding how small systemic changes are going to contribute overall, not just to the variety of people contributing in your workplace, but making sure everyone is as comfortable as possible being productive within the roles that they're in. All righty.
Okay. Thank you, Philip. So when we originally started this, we were looking at a way to, and as you can have seen, this training is geared to assist the students or our interns when they go to their intern site. And we wanted to create a way so that the sites that they go to maybe know what to expect, or have an idea of the individual that's going to be interning at their place, or at their place of business. Okay. And as we morphed into this here, we stuck with that design tool, or that universal design, right? Hey, if this tool can work for our internship sites, it can work for any business with any type of employee. And something that you see listed here is a disability equality index, okay? Or not to be confused with DEI, all right? And the disability equality index was a tool, or more of like a catalog or a list of things that businesses could do that was created by a national work accommodation organization called Disability In. Um, and if individuals, businesses score high on this, they get these certificates. Well, one of the things is we can offer this same certificate through our affiliation and our sponsorship with the Disability In organization that's going to allow us to give out this exact same certificate to any business, whether it be small businesses that might only have 15 or less employees, maybe a medium-sized business that maybe employees that are under 100 or so employees. And then this one, as you see this figure here, 500 or more employees. Disability In actually takes these trainings and applies them to corporations, 400 or 500 companies. So by participating in this, we're giving that same type of recognition, that same type of certificate that Disability In is allowing us to do with this, just based on the content and our again our affiliation with that organization to be recognized as one of the best places to work for disability access as well as innovation. Okay, these are the categories that Disability In suggests and they go through. So what does the culture look like? How is the leadership adapted? Is there enterprise-wide access or is it open access? What are some of the employment practices or the things that we kind of talked about? Like what's the onboarding process? Are applications accessible to all? Where can people go and actually look to apply for those jobs? How are the trainings done? Community engagement, what's happening after the fact? Is there awareness that's being spread that the company is learning that they can give to others? And then supplier diversity for them, they make these connections. They have these groups that all of these companies come together and share these ideas, so that and continually add to this particular roadmap. And this is something again that choose to participate and work through with us. You can be certified as well. Okay, and be considered and looked at and be to be a place where you can work for disability innovation. Okay, you are now eligible to be recognized after completing this training and submitting the roadmap. We will let you know though that there is work involved in it. It could be minor, it could be big, but we do have a rating system or a grading system that we'll go through to get points for different things in each of those phases that we kind of described. Okay. This is a quick look at what our training modules look like. In this photo here, you'll see that this is where we start. And we work through these modules with those that participate. We do have the 4 modules that we listed earlier. And we invite you to participate and become one of these places that could spark innovation by bringing on or allowing our interns or our students to participate at your place of business. These are some contact informations for the project itself related to the website, and some email addresses to reach out to the staff or the leaders of our project. And one of them, which is here today, Dr. Park. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Philip to kind of close us out. And I think we can go over to question and answers if there's any time left. Philip?
Yep, thank you, Jared. I'll just say, if you want to learn more, as I said, we didn't get into specifics because there's a lot that we covered during the course of this. So if you want to learn more or if you want to participate, please do sign up. Our fearless project leader, Dr. Park, is on the call with us today, and that's her contact information in the middle of that email list there. So she can easily address more for you too. And thank you all for paying attention. Really appreciate it. Look forward to some questions.
Thank you, Philip and Jared. So if there's any questions from people in the audience, you can either unmute yourselves and ask the question, or you can type it in the chat. I'll give you everyone a minute or so to do so now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roxanne. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know what's going on with the video, but it's not. Oh, hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. I have a little thing that was covering it. I apologize. Okay. It's not really a question, it's just more of a comment. So I run a center for independent living, and if you're not familiar with centers for independent living, it is, it was created by people with disabilities and we hire people with disabilities. So, as required by federal law, more than 51% of our board and staff have to be reflective of the community that we serve. So we serve a cross disability population. So I was just interested in this training to kind of see what you guys are doing or what you're saying, because it falls in line with what we already practice and do. And my center, Aloha Independent Living Hawaii, we've been here for 16 years. So we serve all of Oahu and I'm sorry, the rural areas of Oahu and all the neighbor islands. So we're the only center right now that serves statewide. Our sister organization, Access to Independence, serves the urban Honolulu side. But so we understand about hiring people with disabilities. We think it is a really good resource because as an employer, you learn many different things of how they adapt and how they function within the job capacity. As an employer, my goal is to help them to be successful, and to get out of their employment, whatever their goal is, whether it's achieving leadership qualities or just even gaining a new skill. A lot of times they're not connected to their peers. So working alongside other individuals or other colleagues who are people with disabilities, it's a more of a welcoming environment. It's not like we've had we've had staff members who were blind and had a service animal in the office. That's part of their accommodation. We've had to lower the lights, in conjunction with working with Ho'opono. They were able to hire Wally Suarez, which I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with, Island Skills Gathering. Wally sent out, his team to dim the lights or, have a certain type of lighting, right? Because it affects her ability to see the screen. We got the technology adapted for her and so forth. So we've done a lot of different and various types of accommodation. When you're talking about individuals with neurodivergent disabilities or conditions, we have staff who have traumatic brain injury. In fact, we have several of them, and working with them and just reminding them, because they don't always remember a lot of things, but just encouraging them and supporting them. Like, what, especially when we're outside doing community presentations, sometimes they feel a little bit embarrassed because in the mid, presentation, they'll just freeze up and forget what they're saying, because as we know, public speaking is one of the things that humans fear besides going to the dentist. So we kind of encourage them to say, hey, you don't even have to have a disability to be a little bit intimidated or fearful to speak publicly, because anybody does. It's just not a natural thing that we do. So we normally have a colleague or myself will be there, and we kind of team up and we'll just re-emphasize or redirect and just remind them. But I love what you guys are doing. I wish that more employers outside the disability realm can see the value of people with disabilities. We, because of the cross disability population that we provide service to, we've been through many challenges. For 16 years that I've been running my agency, even with employees with different accommodations that we provided, we had people with learning disabilities, severe dyslexia. And so in order for this person to function and write emails, I had to hire a whole nother human being to work as a workplace assistant. That was the accommodation that this person needed, on top of the many technological devices, that they said that's a very heavy expense when you're talking about a nonprofit. I don't have a budget of $1 million. I have a budget of $600,000 to serve in the highest, cost of living states in the nation. And I have to serve all of Oahu, rural Oahu and the whole entire neighbor islands. So we have to be very creative and talk with the employee. I think it was either Philip or Jared who mentioned, when should you discuss accommodations or what you need? And within the interview process, I know something that I do is, aside from asking our basic general interview questions, I let them know right up front, the wonderful opportunity to work with an agency that embraces people with disabilities. And I clearly let them know up front, saying, colleagues are myself, as well as many other colleagues within the agency, are people with disabilities. So that's when I open up, say, if there's anything you would like to share, if you would like to ask me any kind of questions, if there are any accommodation you think you might need, please, this is an opportunity for you to share so we can try to work with you. If you are selected for this position, we'll work with you to help you, to help obtain that particular accommodation if we can afford it. Even if it's seeking volunteers from the university and saying, hey, can you volunteer for a couple of hours to help transcribe this because, this person needs that type of assistance, just many different things that we've tried to do. I've had a staff member that, with his disability, he needs to go out and walk for 30 minutes. Like after he comes from all these different Zoom meetings, he needs to process information. So his break requires him to just, it's like almost like a stimming thing. So he just goes and walks and he's able to, process and reflect on what was discussed. And then he has to come back and then he's better able to receive that information and to share that with me about, okay, this is what I learned. I think this is what I think we can do or can't do, or I have certain questions. So there's many different types of accommodations that we've done. And I think it's all for the benefit of helping our employee, whether they have a disability or not, become successful in that particular job. Ultimately, that's what we want because we are contributing to Hawaii's population. We want to be productive, contributing members of society, help our economy and our state in general. So I don't have any questions. I just wanted to share that in case you guys weren't aware of it. And thank you so much for sending out this email. I was really happy to be able to see it and join in for today.
Hi, Roxanne. Thank you so much for your comment. And for those that are on the call, this type of knowledge, this type of expertise in the field is exactly this type of stuff that we want all business owners or all management to be able to either know or have access to. Hence, she just described a roadmap already.
Yeah.
What a great prime example this was. Gave us different types of scenarios that we would love for a business to include on their roadmap. So Roxanne, thank you so much, and so great to see you again. Jarek, are there any other questions or any other
I don't
things?
see any questions in the
Okay.
chat or nobody's asking, but Roxanne, if you don't mind staying for a few minutes after we close out, I would love to chit chat with you for a moment.
Absolutely, I would love to. And
Okay.
just so you folks know, I've worked with Dr. Violet Horvath and Dr. Christina Higa. So we've done videos when it was during COVID, right? Because we were charged, all the different nonprofits, to address those that were affected by COVID. And so we did a survey with our consumers to find out what it was that was impacting them and how we can assist. And two of the biggest things was isolation and also the lack of technology. So we created our Teleconnect program, and it was distributing both the technology, which was iPad, and we would, depending on the consumer, we would make sure that it was equipped with the different types of software to accommodate, whether it's someone who's blind, someone who's hard of hearing, or someone who has visual print, they need to have it enlarged or whatever it was. And we had a trainer that would go out. I mean, we even went as far as Kalapapa. But part of what we did with Dr. Christina Higa is we provided a training video, and we had our staff and our volunteer do the captioning and the audio description for people with disabilities, because we wanted to make sure we reached the whole gamut. Yeah. So we have that on our YouTube page, but that was one of our collaborative projects that we did with Dr. Higa. And then with Dr. Violet Horvath, we're trying to address the inequities and the lack of healthcare for people with disabilities within the medical field. So we formed the Hawaii Disability Healthcare Coalition. And that was one of the things that we wanted to address, because we have consumers in wheelchairs that go to doctors, and if you're trying to get a mammogram, those machines are not accessible. What do you do? How do you address that? Or if you're short, right, and you can't get up on the examining table, how does the doctor address that? So we're trying to tackle it on many different areas. And Dr. Violet's been, and Dr. Higa are in contact over there at the university. They're in key contact with different people to try to figure out how we can do something through the University of Hawaii system, but also within our medical system here locally. How do we address this? And when you go out into the different neighbor islands as well, you're talking about the inequities of just even someone to fix your wheelchair, your scooter. We have consumers on Molokai. And, if your scooter or wheelchair is broken, you only can get service from Maui, which is, I think it's GAMI, or PacMed, which is in Oahu. But if you're just one person, they make that decision on, is it even worth the trip to go over there? They kind of want like several people, but in the meantime, you have that one consumer that's now being, it's isolated in their home and stuck. So again, it's a bigger issue. It's when you're talking about, especially cross disability and the ruralness and just the lack of resources as you get out of Oahu, and I know that's one of my biggest challenges is when we have presentations, can we not make it so Oahu centric? Because I hear from my staff on the neighbor islands, like, hey, what about us? You guys keep forgetting us, like we don't got the same things you got, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. But yes, Jarek, to answer your question, I'll be more than happy to stick around.
Okay, great. I do realize we're over time, so thank you everybody for coming. I'm going to put in the chat really quick a link to our post survey. If you just have a few more minutes, please do complete that post survey. It helps us to kind of guide our future speaker sessions and kind of see what things people are interested in, what things people like, and possibly don't like. So thank you again, everyone, for attending. I did put the link in the chat, so please take a few minutes to fill that out. And we'll see you in the next speaker series. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone. And thank you so much to our speakers for their presentation today. Bye.